Good morning. We're here with Chief Tracy Stone this morning, who is going to be retiring from the town of 7 years of service to the community. Good morning, Chief Stone.
Good morning.
As you look back over your last 37 years in law enforcement, what one or two things really stands out that is memorable to you during your years of law enforcement?
Oh my goodness. Well, as you mentioned, it's been 37 years. I started here at Bladensburg as a dispatcher, and then transitioned into a police officer 30 years ago. I think one thing, of course, many of the crimes stand out as impactful to me personally and to the community, but I guess more of a something that stands out as far as the police department itself is just our community involvement that has evolved over the years, and I think is at its peak now. Or hopefully not at its peak, and can continue, of course, but is at its high point.
Well, speaking of evolving, 37 years in law enforcement, you've seen a lot of changes from when you first became a slick sleeve to become the chief of police. What is one of the biggest changes you have seen over your 37 years?
Oh my, I'd say technology. When I'll go back to when I started as a dispatcher, when we received calls for service, we wrote them down on a piece of paper. That has evolved into a computer system that is countywide, that we can interact with other agencies, that we can now dispatch, say if someone calls and needs an ambulance, or we're on the scene of an accident and they say start an ambulance, we used to pick up the phone and call the fire department. Now it's literally transmitted electronically, there's no phone calls involved, and it speeds up that, the response time it takes minutes off of that, which can be a life-saving in the correct situation. From the police standpoint, I'd say that technology has made tremendous changes. When I started, we had ticket books. We don't use ticket books too much anymore. It's all electronic. The officer can do everything in their police car, and it's sent to the courts, and court dates are set up all electronically. All the paper is essentially gone from that part.
You said you were in CID at one point in your career. Mm-hmm. CID can be a very interesting part of any law enforcement officer's career. What would you say would be a case that really stands out in your mind as a case that was a challenging case to solve, but you were able to solve it at the end, and what did it take to get there?
I'd say in Bladensburg, our CID handles all crimes, all serious crimes, with the exceptions of homicides and sex offenses. I found in CID very interesting because we our limit was the burglaries and the robberies, and that to me is much more impactful to the residents of the town. And I can recall, probably, I don't recall the year, but we did have a situation where we had multiple burglaries in the apartment complexes, and the perpetrator was going into the attics and breaking through the ceilings and coming into people's homes. Wow. While they're away. It's quite impactful. You come home and your ceilings smashed in and your property's gone. And that happened at multiple complexes within the town, and we felt that it was the same person. And we were quite diligent when we took those reports and processing the crime scenes and getting fingerprints. And through the fingerprints, we were able to make an identification and close out all those cases, and hopefully make the people sleep a little easier, knowing that the perpetrator was locked up in that situation.
Okay, 37 years of law enforcement. That is an incredible amount of years to be not only in law enforcement, but you did the full 37 years in the town of Bladensburg. Mm-hmm. As you've come up through the ranks, what is one important lesson that you would impart on incoming officers or officers who are currently with the department?
I'd say the most important thing is that there are a lot of bad guys out there, and the officers should do what they need to do to protect themselves and to protect the community from those bad guys. But not everyone is the bad guy. We have, say, 10,000 people in the town of Bladensburg, and if we took every person that we locked up in a year, it would be a small percentage of the population. And sometimes police officers can lose sight of that. I encourage them not to lose sight of that. And as a police officer and as being part of the hiring process for a number of years, I bet that almost everybody that came before a panel, a hiring panel, when asked the question, why do you want to become a police officer, it's to help people. And I would hope that the officers don't forget that and continue to try to help people.
Well, speaking of perpetrators, you brought up a very good point. My understanding is that most perpetrators or suspects are non-residents of Bladensburg. Is that typically the case?
Yep, that's a fair statement, that a majority are from outside the town when we make an arrest.
And I think it's important to stress to our community that our community is really a safe community, and those who live here and work here and visit here really care about the community, and our police department has always played a vital role in that. One of the things that we've gone through in the last several years as the department has evolved is really focusing on community policing and 21st century policing. Mm-hmm. Can you expand on that a little bit? We try to emphasize all the pillars of the community policing, the 21st century community policing, instill that in our officers, whether it be knowing your community. We stress health and education in that, and we again try to get everyone to take part in that. What could you say, or would you say, is probably one of your greatest accomplishments since you've been in the police department?
Oh my goodness. I would say what sticks in my mind most, and what I often refer to, is when I went through the selection process for chief of police. It was not a good time in police and community relations. It was not long after a Freddie Gray incident in Baltimore, there was an in-custody death, and tensions within the community were not good. And sometimes, though that does happen periodically, and sometimes it's ours, as a police profession, it's our own doing. Sometimes not, but and one of the residents shared sent a comment to me that I'd like to share with you, if I could. And I often, when things get a little challenging, either in the police department, internally, or outside the police department, in the community, I refer to this, and it kind of puts me back on point. And give me just a moment. And this is a comment that was sent to me during the process by a resident of the town. And if I can just expand on it a little bit, there's a family that lives in town that has been here about the same amount of time that I have. Often had contact with them, contact with the parents, contact with the kids. We talk to each other. Parents would often say, my kids aren't doing what I'd like them to do. And the parents would say, the kids would say, my parents won't let me do what I want to do. But in the end, things all turn out. And in this particular case, the person has grown up and has children of their own. And they shared a comment with me that not all cops are bad. I told my son about you today. I smiled, remembering how my family and I always had a good cop looking out for us. I reminded him that there are still good, honest men in blue out there. And that has helped me get through some tough times since then. So that kind of made things all worthwhile.
You have always had the ability to, whether it's a challenging time or a stressful time, to embrace what's going on and look at it from all perspectives. And that's one thing I've always admired about you. You don't let things get to you, or if you do a great job of not showing it. Mm-hmm. And I do admire that, and I've always admired that in you. As you part and leave Bladensburg, if there's one last piece of advice that you could give, not just only the town, but for the department, could you share something with us?
I'd say stay involved in the community. Don't make it just a place to come home to and go to work from if you're a resident, and if you're an employee, don't make it just a place to go to work and go home from. Kind of be involved in the community. I've tried to, within the Port Town communities, include Bladensburg, Homer Manor, Cottage Seat, and Edmonston. I've tried to be involved in those communities. During my time here, I grew up in the area, graduated from Bladensburg High School, and as I retire at the end of the month, I plan to stay involved in the community as well.
Well, we thank you for your service and your commitment to our community. It is greatly appreciated, not just by staff, not just by the mayor and council, but we know by the community at large as well. Do you have any last parting words to say to the community as you not sail off into the sunset, but as you start the next chapter and journey in your life?
Yes, it is. It's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed the last 37 years that have just flown by, and I don't know how it can be 37 years because I'm only 39, as I keep saying. But this is kind of, I'm going to call it a semi-retirement. I still am not retiring from work completely. I'll be doing something else, whether it's a butcher, a baker, or a candlestick maker, or something else. But I do hope to continue to see everyone and work with the community.
Thank you so much, Chief Stone.
Thank you.
We wish you great success.
Thank you very much.
As you move forward.
Thank you.